President Obama's NLRB recess appointments are generating controversy on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. Joining me now is Peter Schaumber. He's a former chairman and board member of the NLRB. It's good to see you, sir. What, in a nutshell, what is it that you have a problem with? Because we know that President Bush made 170 or so recess appointments, President Clinton 130. That everybody does it. It's in the Constitution. Is it with the fine point here about whether Congress was in session or not?
Well, it is. That is the point, but there are really 2 points.
Okay.
One, the Department of Justice has an interpretation that there has to be at least a recess of longer than 3 days in order for a president to name a recess appointment. Here, the two Democratic nominees, their nominations were made on December 16th. On December 17th, the Senate went on Christmas recess. They didn't even submit their paperwork. I don't even know if they received paperwork, which asked really very important questions, such as conflicts of interest. None of that was done. So this is really extraordinary. Now, again, you know, Senator Harry Reid, this was a process which he adopted in order to prevent President Bush from naming recess appointments in 2007 and 2008. They remained in session. What they did, the mechanism is that they would gavel in and gavel out every 4th day because of the 3-day rule.
And I know what worked for the goose should be good for the gander, and obviously they went back. You know, and it happens a lot of times. You see with politics, whoever happens to be in power at the time, all of a sudden the rules change. But let's say that the president had waited till there was a true recess. He would have been able to put these people in, right?
I think certainly that Terry Flynn, who was my former chief counsel, he's balanced, a former management attorney, but understands the legitimate interests of organized labor as well as employers. He would have been confirmed. Yeah. Sharon Block, whether or not she would have been confirmed.
No, not confirmed. The president, if he waits, he can put whomever that he wants in, and any president can do that. That's part of being president, isn't it? If it's a recess appointment, he can put people in.
He could, yes, he could have, but I think he had to wait at least that they submit the paperwork and go through some Senate vetting, and none of that occurred here.
Right.
And that's really unprecedented.
Because you could make the case that the NLRB gets down to 2 members and they can't have quorum or whatever it is, and if the Republicans decide we're going to keep it at 2 members, then the agency is essentially out of business, right? So, the president almost had to do something, or at least feels entitled, right?
I don't agree with that. Listen, when in 2007, the nominations to the NLRB were stalled in the Senate. They were being denied a vote. We were only 2 members. We did nothing for a number of months, and during that period of time, organized labor was fully supportive of what was going on. Then for the next 28 months, we were unable to make any major decisions because we were only 2 members. Yet, once again, this was fully supported by organized labor and by the Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah, but that's probably because it was a Republican who controlled the White House at that time, and maybe organized labor didn't want them putting anybody on the board at that point.
Right.
Well, they didn't. That's absolutely correct. Right. But is that appropriate? Peter, is it any more appropriate than, for example, the Wisconsin Democrats leaving Wisconsin so there couldn't be a vote?
Right. Peter, the thing that really strikes home and makes sense to me is what's in the Journal today, and that is because of the way that this was done, anything that the NLRB does at this point, and anything that Mr. Cordray does, Attorney General, I don't know what he's called now, Director Cordray, I guess, anything that they do is subject to a challenge now that could take years and years. So every single, edict that they decide on is going to be tied up in the courts. And the Journal points out that for the president to do this, to score maybe a couple of points with, to say Congress is do nothing and score a couple of points with labor, to put this flux into the whole system, it just wasn't worth it, and it was a bad move.
I think it was a bad move, but again, Cordray's situation is something different. His nomination was for different reasons. Right. It was because of the statute. But the only stalled nomination to the NLRB was the Republican Terry Flynn, who was nominated on January 5th of 2011. The 2 Democrats weren't installed at all. Their names were before the Senate, if you will, for only 24 hours.
Right. But both of these appointments are all, well, how many is it? All 4 of them are going to be subject to a constitutional challenge because they were done when people are going to say the Senate was still in session.
That's right. The president has really kind of arrogated to himself the decision as to whether or not the Senate was in recess or not. That really is quite unprecedented.
I just think it's astounding that I'm not sure it was a great. I mean, our forefathers, almost everything they did, you look at it, you say it was amazing, the foresight that they had. But the whole idea of a recess appointment, which basically allows a president to put whomever he wants into the agencies that he wants. I mean, when he's in power, he basically can control the agencies based on a recess appointment. It's almost like I guess the original reason for it was to make sure the agencies could operate when Congress wasn't in session. But the way that it's turned out, it's just been, you know, turned into something that allows the president to control the different agencies, whoever's in the White House.
Yeah, but again, there were limits to it. And this president has kind of, well, for this president, he's kind of eliminated the limits. And I think it's going to be challenged. And I think really in all likelihood, these appointments are going to be found to have been invalid, because what he's done essentially is to eliminate the advice and consent provision of the Constitution.
Right. Okay, we appreciate your time today, Mr. Schaumber. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to have Thomas Donahue of the Chamber of Commerce with us later this morning. We'll see what he thinks. Probably not happy either.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be